Hi, hello, welcome back to the Truthful Ministry podcast. We are here again. We missed last week. We're terrible. Life's been busy for both of us.
I'll take the blame on that. I had the Sunday preceding that week, I preached, and so that week I was real busy. And then the following weekend, so this past weekend, I hosted a youth event all weekend. We had D-Now, and so I also had all my normal stuff on top of that.
Yeah, all your schoolwork and stuff.
We got to Sunday, and Johnny and I are talking after church and realized, man, we haven't recorded in a minute.
Yeah.
We didn't have anything for last week, so that's on me.
Yeah, and it was on
My
both because I
bad.
also could have tried to remind you and squeeze something in. It's a team effort, but we're here. And we're really excited because the term we're going to do is every few episodes or so, every 5 or 6 or something, we're going to do, we're calling a Sidequest episode. This is a Sidequest where this
very
one,
first
if this doesn't interest you, then that's totally fine. If you want to skip this episode and go to another one, you're more than welcome. But this episode, we're going to dive into a little bit more about some stuff that we spend our casual time doing.
Yeah.
Our, our hobbies, things like that. And a lot of that is video games, board games, movies, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And we thought about this for this one. Again, we don't really prepare what we're going to say beforehand, but we're starting to nerd out about Civilization 7.
Yep.
Just dropped. And Cody had one of those moments. I'm glad you picked up on it because I've previously talked about how every once in a while we need to be like, dude, don't tell me yet, save it for the podcast. And Cody earlier already was like, yeah, so I played Civ 7 for a few hours. And I was like, yeah, who'd you play? And he was like, we'll save it for the pod. So I'm excited to hear all about it because we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but Civ in general, the Sid Meier Civilization games, have been pretty influential to a degree.
Yeah.
In our lives. I played it so much in high school. So yeah, Civ 7 just dropped the new one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been pumped for it. I've been playing Civ since Civ 5 came out. So I was in middle school when that one came out.
Yeah.
I think Civ 5 is probably my most played game of all time in terms of raw hours.
Dang.
I'm well over 1,000 on it. I'm pretty sure.
So in the event that someone is listening and they're not a huge video game person, but they're still just intrigued by what we're talking about, what are we looking at when we play Civ? What kind of game is it? What are we doing?
The easiest comparison I can think of is if you've played say Risk, the board game Risk. Imagine something like Risk combined with say
Settlers of Catan.
That's what I was thinking too, and just blown up, and it's more complicated and everything, and much more details and everything. It's a video game still, but the genre it's a 4X strategy game, and the 4X comes from there's 4 pillars of the genre. It's I don't remember what they are, but they're it's you settle cities, you grow a nation from the ancient age all the way up into...
You start off with one little settler unit that settles a city.
Yeah, and you develop it all across the ages into the modern era, and past games into the future era. I think that's something that's changed with the new one, which we'll talk about. I have my thoughts on it. And there's other different civilizations that you're competing with to see who's going to win. Yeah.
And there's different ways you can win. You obviously could, almost in a Risk type factor, just slay out, to dominate every nation.
Domination.
With your warriors, and eventually they go from warriors that are swordsmen to guys with muskets, and then eventually they become full on infantry, modern machine guns and stuff.
Yeah.
You just kill everybody else. But there's also the scientific path where typically it's you lead so far in science that you colonize the moon first, or you land on the moon first, something like that. The culture, your culture is just so dominant. Everybody looks to your country, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, I remember Civ 5 where whenever your culture becomes dominant, you get a message from the other leaders. And when your culture dominates their Civ, they'll send you a message saying, "Our people are wearing your blue jeans and listening to your pop music." I don't know why that always was funny to me. If Gandhi is the leader of India, if he plays India.
Yeah.
Our people are wearing your blue jeans.
Yeah. So speaking of Gandhi, that's another cool part is it is, a historically inspired game.
Yeah.
You're not just it's not just fantasy or you're making stuff up. So you mentioned Gandhi in Civ 5 and Civ 7. I've been playing, I literally forget his name, but I've been playing as the guy who was famous for leading Rome or something like that. He's the blonde guy. Augustus, okay.
Yeah, that's who I'm playing for my first run here.
There's Augustus. There's somebody named Hatshepsut or something like that. That's the Egyptian lady. Xerxes from Persia. You can play as Napoleon is one of them. So people like that, like from real life, and obviously they have their same like civilizations, but they're not attached anymore. So I can play Augustus, but be leading Egypt, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But there's like the Egyptians, and there's all kinds of different like colonies you can play as when you compete with like the other nations and stuff.
Yeah, that's new to Civ 7. I haven't gotten to play with that really yet because I started as Rome with Augustus as the leader.
Okay.
But in Civ 7, there's 3 ages, and whenever you pass into the next age, your empire changes, and you're a different civil. You have to pick a new civilization. And so I'm close to finishing the first age in my first playthrough, but I'm not there yet. So
yeah,
we'll see
it's
what that's
super
kinda
fun.
like.
I think just to talk about like why I like the Civ games and stuff, it's very like you would think that a game about like war and like conquering a continent and stuff like that would be like stressful in a way, but when you're playing with like NPCs and stuff, like it's low key peaceful.
It's pretty chill.
You can just kind of sit there and like it's a turn-based game, and since you're not playing with real people, it doesn't matter how long your turn takes.
Yeah.
Like you could sit there forever. You could walk away and like not pause the game and then come back. It's low key very relaxing, and by the end, it's very satisfying to just see like, man, I started this game with one little settler, and now I've got this continent's worth of people and all these different units.
Yep.
It's a very satisfying game to play. I think it's very peaceful because I think when you look at it, if you watch someone play and you only get to see the ending, you would probably be very intimidated because there's just so much happening. But you really do start with one little settler, and so it's easy to manage, and you get used to it. It's a very satisfying game. So with you having started playing it, I'll say, I guess I'll just start right off the bat. The community talked about like the UI and stuff. Like I didn't really think that was a big deal. I
haven't had any issues. Like there's not been any UI stuff that I've ran into that's been super confusing to me at all. I can think of. I mean, I've only played for about 3 hours so far, but I played 3 hours straight, and I didn't have any like major complaints from like this was just done poorly standpoint. There's some stuff where it's like I'm still trying to figure out how new mechanics and things work, but like it's fairly usable. Part of it too, I watched some YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
So I'm not coming in completely blind to it, so that's probably part of it.
I think it's a lot like board games. Like whenever I have someone over, like we play a new board game that someone's never played before, I always say like, the first time you play is always going to be almost like the tutorial.
Right.
The second time you play is the real first time you get to play. Because after you've played through it once, then you're like, okay, now that I'm here at the end, I know what I should have been looking for at the beginning. And that's how I felt with Civ 7. I think probably how I felt with every Civ, is you start off a little bit confused, but then by the end you go, okay, now that I get it, the next time I play, I know what I'm going to do. And so the second time you play is always a little bit better. I think the community as a whole, in the video game industry as a whole, low-key, people just like complaining. I don't know what it is.
This is just the culture. Any kind of consumer like art in our culture, like this is true for movies, TV shows,
honestly,
video game, anything. It's just the default reaction to things nowadays is negative. That's kind of my opinion. Is like nobody approaches something. You're either pumped about it, or you're ticked about it, or you don't know that it exists. Like this. There's no like nuance, and that's just for everything. That's a lot of topic, but like that's just everything's very polarized nowadays, and that infects these things, and which is sad.
So before we transition a little bit, I kind of eventually want to talk about something that me, you, and Courtney talked about one time, where we talked about like our favorite games and like also games that we think are like very influential for us. They might not necessarily be our favorite or like our most played, but like they meant a lot or something like that. But sticking with Civ, because I know that Civ probably is one of those for maybe both of us in a way, like influentially. Before we get to that, what are some of your thoughts? Like whenever we were about to start going into more detail, you said we'll save it for the pod. What are your thoughts on what's going down with your Civ 7 game?
Okay, so Courtney came into the room right before I got done playing for today, and I turned to her and I think pretty confidently said, I already like this better than Civ 6. We've talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah.
I was not a huge fan of Civ 6. I've put multiple hundreds of hours into it. So it's not like, I gave it a good shot and I liked it fine. I did not like it as much as Civ 5.
I agree.
And so far, some of the stuff that I like that I remember from Civ 5, they've brought back. like the happiness mechanic.
Yes.
I really like the happiness mechanic.
I could not stand happiness in Civ 6. Low key.
Yeah, it is annoying the way it worked because it was very obtuse and like
Yes.
it's a lot simpler just to have kind of a universal happiness that you can track. I like that a lot. The game is really pretty.
Yes, it's
for
beautiful.
one.
It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, and like very detailed. Again, when Courtney came into the room, her first shot of it is I had just finished building the Coliseum, and so I was doing the whole like cinematic where it was building the Coliseum, and she's like, "It looks really detailed and pretty." I was like, "Yeah, I know, it's nice." It's really snappy. Like,
Yes.
I don't know if that's just I've got a newer computer, but like these games tend to at release be not that snappy. Like that tends to be not well optimized. That's like, you know, after the game's been out for 6 months, a year, they've released some optimization updates and stuff, and then maybe it feels a little snappier. But it feels really well put together. I haven't had any crashes or bugs or anything.
Yeah.
So all of that is really nice. And honestly, I think a mark of like it being a game that I know I'm going to like a lot is I played for about 3 hours, and I had to make myself stop playing.
Yep.
Which does not happen to me very much these days. It's like typically I play a game for like an hour or two, and I'm like, all right, okay,
Yeah.
I'm feeling my back's starting to hurt. I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go do something else. It's got that vibe that I like about Civ of, you know, that one more turn.
Yes.
That's the catchphrase for
Yes.
the series is one more turn, and I've never felt it in Civ 6.
Yeah.
Civ 7 has so far got me there.
So to give a couple examples on my end of how that feels, I have a standing desk, and I recently got one of those little bitty like treadmills that are just the bottom.
Okay.
Like, it's not a whole machine.
Staying fit.
And so I like have started walking on it, and I walk like for maybe an hour or so, and I just walk like it goes up to like 3 something miles per hour, where it would just start to be like a speed walk or a jog, but I just keep it on like 1.6, just a nice steady pace.
Yeah.
And I'll watch YouTube videos, do whatever, and we started playing Civ, and like legit, I'll turn on the treadmill and we'll be playing, and all of a sudden I look down, it's like, you've been walking for an hour and 20 minutes, and I'm just like, I didn't even think about it. And then literally Saturday night, like it was like 9 o'clock, or no, I think this was last night. Yeah, it was last night. Me and Bryson were playing multiplayer, and it was like 9 o'clock, and I was just about to settle this new city. I was like trying to get my settler like to this different island, and I was like, all right, well, I'll just settle the city, and then I'll probably end the turn. And then time goes by, like I settled the city, but then there was this thing, and so I clicked another thing, and literally Bryson all of a sudden goes, dude, it's getting close to your bedtime. And I looked over, and it was like 9:50 something. I was like, where did the time go?
Right.
You know, so I literally had to be like, yeah, I think I should probably go to bed soon. Like I've got stuff to do. So it is that kind of game that just you don't feel like it's taking time. It's just so chill.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's a little early for me still to make any like real in-depth comments about anything. I don't have strong
Even for
opinions
me, I
formed
think so.
about stuff. I haven't finished a game yet, so it's hard to say.
Yeah.
And I'm also, for the first playthrough, I just kind of left everything default settings. So like difficulty is kind of low and everything, and it's very tutorial kind of level. And so it's really easy right now.
Yeah.
I don't think that's just the game is really easy. It's just I'm playing it on an easier difficulty as someone who's played a lot of Civ. And so I was telling Courtney, like, you know, I'm going for a militaristic start because that's my favorite way to play the game. And so I always do Rome. When I start a new Civ game, I play Rome and play military victory. That's my sweet spot. And my first war, actually, I didn't even declare it, which is surprising for a low. That's a good sign to me, because on a lot of the other Civ games, you play on low difficulties, and the AI just doesn't do anything to antagonize you. It feels like I got declared on by Harriet Tubman.
Yep.
Which is hilarious to me.
Yes.
That's one of my it's not a complaint. It's just kind of like weird to me.
Yeah.
Is there's some of the leaders that you can play as were never led a nation
Right.
or anything.
I think that they can kind of get away with that though now, since the leaders aren't tied with the nation, and that's kind of what they're probably going for. Is like,
I
hey,
think so.
We've made 7 Civ games now. How do we not just keep recycling the same leaders from history? Well, we could probably open it up a little bit and just do influential people, not literal leaders now because of this tie thing. So I'm hoping they keep building on that.
You do end up in funny situations where Harriet Tubman declares war on Augustus Caesar of Rome.
Yeah.
And, like surprise, like I don't know, it was just funny.
Yeah.
But like I hadn't been like really gearing up for war yet. Like I was aiming for a military victory, so I'd been building some arms. I had like 4-5 military units, and she attacks me, and the AI was actually kind of smart about it, which was cool to see. But like I steamrolled her, just absolutely steamrolled her. It was not hard. So I'm interested to see what that looks like playing on a harder difficulty.
Yeah.
Because the AI seems smarter.
I think
than
they
in
are.
previous games.
There's also clearly like the AI is smart enough to know which leaders are military-esque because Harriet Tubman is one who her like whole thing is like espionage and stuff. So I think she's pretty aggro. Xerxes, if you're in a game with Xerxes, he's going to war with you. Period.
Yeah.
There's a couple other people that are like clearly aggro, but talking now about like just how many hours you've put in the Civ and stuff like that. We had a really cool conversation maybe 2 months ago or so about like just important games in our lives. And I knew for you like Civ 5 was one, and you had a really cool quote that I'll let you talk about of just like I think you've said it on the podcast before with Civ 5 and how you knew like a verse from Psalms or something like that was from, or Proverbs maybe, that was from Civ 5.
So teach us to number our days that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom.
Yeah.
That's whenever you research a tech in a civilization game, it'll a new technology, it'll like give you a pop-up and they find some quote that kind of just for flavor to like make it exciting. And a lot of the early game texts, they'll do like scripture quotes, especially in the older games. They don't do it as much anymore, believe it or not, as culture changes. But like I played that game before I ever became a Christian, and it made me like, just from hearing it so much, I memorized some scripture before I ever became a Christian.
So for me, like growing up, I think the like most influential like consoles in a way were the GameCube and the PS2. Those were like our two. Like we had a GameCube, and we had a PS2 in our house, and so those were like the games. Man, I played Wind Waker, like Legend of Zelda Wind Waker was huge. Legend of Zelda Four Swords was on there. The Pokemon Coliseum, just started playing through again, was amazing. And then Super Mario Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion, that was like my era. And so I played a lot of GameCube games, man. And that kind of built into like later liking like the older Zelda games, because I was like, man, Zelda games are dope. And then when the Wii came out, you could play like the Nintendo 64 games on the Wii. And so that was my first experience with Ocarina of Time when Majora's Mask was on the Wii. And gosh, I love those. So big Zelda fan from that. And I would say just really all that Nintendo stuff and Pokemon. Pokemon for me has always been like, I had a Game Boy, I had a Game Boy SP, and then later a DS. And Pokemon in general has been like the most influential like series across my life. But I think in general, like the first video game I ever played was a Pokemon game. My cousin came over and he had like a Game Boy. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is so dope. Like all I did was catch like a Weedle or something. I think I literally just caught a Weedle for him, and it was probably annoying for him because he's 2 years older than me. So let's say I'm like 6, I don't know how old I was, but he's like 8 or 9 probably, playing through the game. I pick it up and was like, please let me play. Like, I don't know what's happening. And I caught a Weedle, so like I just used a ball to catch a random Weedle and thought like, dude, I'm awesome. Like, look, I caught this Weedle. And he's probably like, it's a Weedle. But I just remember thinking like, this is insane. I want more of this. And so
I feel like Pokemon really is just one of those games that for some people, it really scratches an itch. It's for me one I can like I've got to be in the mood for Pokemon, but like my nephew, he's like, oh gosh, I don't feel bad. He's like 6, 7 years old, I think. But at Christmas, you know, his parents haven't allowed him to get any like video game consoles or anything yet, and they're more worried about him having any of the new stuff because of like the internet, and they don't want him to just have easy internet connection. Well, I had my old Game Boy Advance, and so I bought some Pokemon games for it, and I gave it to him for Christmas. And, like, I won Christmas. It was awesome. And the exact same thing that you were just saying with the, like, he'd catch a Pokemon and be like, Cody, Uncle Cody. And, like, he was so, like, so proud of himself for everything that he did in that game. It was awesome.
They do a good job, like, any good video game, I'm getting deep right here. Any good video game that people like really like, even if it's not like the flashiest or like the most, you know, well known, whatever, any game that people constantly want to come back to usually has really good just like satisfaction mechanics, which basically what I mean is like when you catch a Pokemon, there's always like the little sparks, and it's like dun 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 dun,
Yeah.
and you're like, I caught a Pokemon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like whenever a Pokemon levels up, it plays music. Whenever like a Pokemon evolves, it plays music. It's always like, wow, your Pokemon evolved. Like it satisfies you, especially for a younger kid.
Right.
But even like on a adult level, like on a competitive level, like we've talked about how. And this is completely changing genre, so this is just a mini tangent. But like in like shooter games, like Overwatch is very famous for like it feels very satisfying to get headshots because like when you're shooting somebody, like the little hit marker sounds, obviously like most Call of Duties and stuff, you get hit marker sounds like, and it like just feeds your brain when you're shooting. When you get headshots specifically, it'll glow red for a second, and be like ding 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 ding, ding, and like it dinks, and it's like a very satisfying sound.
Yeah.
And so there's like people talk about how if like the reason no one wants to play tank characters is because there's no like satisfaction there. Your job as a tank is basically just sit there, take damage, swing a hammer, and there's no like satisfaction mechanics.
Right.
Whereas all the other classes and stuff in the game get like cool noises or like flashy rewards and like you feel good.
See,
So-
I think about that in terms. I use the term the gameplay loop, because every game, just period, no matter it doesn't not just video games. Every game that you play, there's a gameplay loop.
Yeah.
And there's that. The loop is the completion of the loop is the satisfaction thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so what makes a game fun is, is the loop to get there satisfying to you and well designed so that whenever you get the satisfaction, it naturally kind of eases you right into like, all right, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So like you get like Zelda, for example, we're talking about Zelda. What's the gameplay loop of Zelda? You get some kind of story direction saying, hey, you need to go to this place and find this temple. And you go and you find a temple and it's like a dungeon or something. And so now you're exploring the dungeon, you're solving puzzles, and you're finding new gear and things, and and then you get to the climax of the dungeon and you fight a boss, and you get to use all the new stuff you got in the dungeon to fight the boss, and you feel smart because whenever you use your stuff, and you feel strong because you got new abilities. And then you beat the boss, and there's like the cinematic, and they do all the music, and you get the heart container falls from the sky, and and then you get done, you come out of the temple, and it's like, all right, where's the next one? And it just very naturally eases you into the next one to go to. And so any game, video games in particular, it's really important that they've got a strong gameplay loop. But any game, I mean, you think of like tag, as basic as it gets. Tag, what's the gameplay loop of tag? Your friends, you get together, somebody's it. Count to 60s. You got the anticipation building while the person who's it's counting. Everybody's running and hiding. Then you're sitting there and hiding like, oh man, oh man, oh man. And you're running around trying to find them. And like you can, when you're the one hiding, you can feel the pressure. You hear them walking, and maybe they walk near you and your heart gets pumping. And then they walk away, and then you feel clever because you were able to hide from them. They couldn't find you. And then if you get found, you're like, oh. And now there's the punishment of you're it now. And so that everybody restarts. Everybody that didn't get caught feels smart.
Yeah.
Because I hid in a good spot, nobody found me. And then the gameplay loop resets, and you're it. And so not only is it fun, but the game punishes you for playing poorly, but in a way that then gives you a unique reward. You get a round where you get to do something different. You get to run around, which gives you time to look for different hiding spots and stuff. And so like tag is a timeless game for kids because the gameplay loop is really simple.
Yeah.
And it's like well done. Like that's just some basic game design theory.
That was mad deep for how simple it was, but I also randomly thought like if someone clipped that out of context and just made it look like we're just having an in-depth podcast discussion on like, what is tag?
I think about game design stuff a lot, like game design theory, too much. We'll do an episode of this one of these days on like D&D, but like running D&D has a lot of game design. You have to think about that stuff a lot. I try to anyway. But yeah.
How much to you does a story matter in video games?
It depends on the game, obviously. But for me, I tend to be drawn more towards a game that tells a story.
I agree.
Even something like, but not even necessarily in like a traditional sense. So like, I love like a Zelda that has this kind of like almost fairy tale story being told. Because like I don't care about like I wouldn't play Zelda if there wasn't a story.
Yeah, I agree.
The reason why I care to do the stuff and to overcome the challenges because I want to save the princess and save the world, right? Defeat the big bad evil guy, save the world, save the princess, all that good stuff. I need. There's certain kinds of games that need the story to drive it. There's other games that I like that generate unique stories, and I like that too. And that's one of the reasons why I love playing strategy games, like these big grand strategy games, like Civ. I could name some other ones that I like to play.
It's a good way to put it. Generate a story.
Like when you play Civilization, it randomly generates a map. It randomly generates who you're playing against. So every game is different, and you build the story of your world when you play that game. And so it's like that kind of unique element of, hey, this Civ way back in the early game, like declared a surprise war on me and stabbed me in the back, and it really put me behind at the beginning of the game. I'm gonna get mine later, we just got beef the rest of the game. And that's just unique to that game. Or maybe it's like, hey, I've been allies with this guy for the entire game, and it's just like you build that story up of our civilizations across the ages have been allied. Like I like that.
I think a good way to put it for me is I really love a great story, but I think a game can do a great job with what you were saying of like letting me make my own story as long as like the world building feels good.
Yes.
Like I want to feel like I'm in the world. Because I'm a player at your table. I'm a sucker for lore.
Yeah.
Like, just give me more lore. Give me more, like, detail about just the room and the history of it or whatever. Because I like feeling like I'm there. If I can feel like I'm in it, like, that's what's going to keep me in the game. That's what makes me feel like I look at the clock and all of a sudden an hour goes by because I'm like, I'm there.
Yeah.
And I think, in a way, a good example of that, too, a game that we both really like, that you've played a lot more than me, is, like, Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Where you've always described it before as, like, they give you just enough flavor and just enough little pieces of lore, but like it's unless you go watch
hungry.
Unless you go watch a bunch of YouTube videos of people theorizing, there's not really a super direct, clear, bold line of here's exactly what's happening, but you feel like you're in it. The thematic
they tell
of the
us
world.
there is a story, like there clearly is a story that like the person that made the game knows all the answers. Like that's obvious from the way it's presented. But you're playing an Elden Ring in a world like several decades, if not a century or so, after like essentially the world has ended, and so the game's not just like, well, you're the protagonist in the story, so you need to know all the details of the story. It's like you're just a dude, like you're just a guy, and that's kind of one of the appeals of that game is you are just some dude that through sheer force of will becomes powerful. But like this random dude's not gonna no one's just gonna be like, all right, here's the story.
Yeah.
You find these little bits and details here and there that you're picking up and you gotta piece it together, and some of the puzzle pieces are just lost. And so you gotta kind of fill in the gaps and ask questions and use your imagination, and then that kind of brings in that's a very unique form of storytelling because it brings the community in, and you get to see people, like you were saying on like YouTube, people their theories about like, all right, here's where the puzzle piece is missing. Here's all the random bits of lore from all over the game and like little item descriptions and stuff that I found. And here's what I think happened here. What do you think? And that stuff's cool. Like I love that stuff. I really am someone that I don't think a game has to have a story to be good. A good game is made way better with a good story.
Right.
I think that
That's a great way to put it.
like I don't know of any game that wouldn't benefit from a good story to keep me invested in it. Like honestly.
Yeah. I remember when I was younger, like I said, we had a GameCube, and I talked a lot about the GameCube games, but like on the PS2.
See, I was a PS2 kid. That's all I had for
the most. Like I love Spyro games because I feel like I remember the story being kind of cool. Like once they brought in Cinder and stuff, but the biggest game always was going to be Kingdom Hearts, man. Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2, both on the PS2, man, were so good. And that's
I miss the
genuinely
train on Kingdom Hearts.
It's just when I like woke up, I vividly remember being like 6, 7 years old. I don't know how old I was, but like I watched my sister beat it, and like I watched the ending cutscene, and I started to cry at the end because I literally was like, it's over, and it's like, yep, we beat the game, and I was like, but I need to know more. Like I have to know more, and I was like so upset. That's when I feel like I kind of cognitively realized, like, dude, I love getting invested in like characters and like a story and seeing where things go. And I mean, with Kingdom Hearts, they went so deep. They have so many games. But I like that because again, I'm a sucker for like lore, and so you want to drop a prequel to the prequel that takes place 5,000 years ago and has this character, like I'm in. I love that kind of stuff. And then a modern example of that like we had to talk about episode 1, Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3, man, is my favorite video game of all time because it does both. It has a great story, but at the same time, you're making your own story. Because
that's true.
They've
that's a good point.
Intentionally made it that way. Like they took so much time and love and effort to try and think of like probably the most common scenarios and how people would maybe kind of want to play to where you can get different endings, you can romance different NPCs. There's so many, like even the side quests can have like different endings, and so you can end up like I remember Bryson when we were like probably maybe getting toward the end of the game. He said that he saw some guy on Twitter talking about like, I don't really understand Baldur's Gate 3 that much. Like, I don't know. I talked to this NPC, and no one really seems to agree with what I'm doing. So I feel like I'm just kind of playing my own way. And here's what's happening on my screen. And people, like, he showed a screenshot. People were like, what is your game? Like, how did you end up here? And stuff like that. And he said here, someone in the comments was like, well, what did you do with Will? Like, is Will not? And, like, the guy was like, who's Will? And it's just, like, how crazy that this dude's, like, in Act 2. And just does, so people can literally play, like, they can make their own story out of it, even though there is, like, an overarching thing. And so those two things combined, plus I can do it with the homies. I love, like you said, a good game is made like even greater with like a greater story. I think on top of that even more is like if I can just do it co-op. Because especially as I get older, me personally, like I get like genuinely double the fun sharing the experience with somebody. Like I love a good single player game for sure. Like I could play Civ by myself. I'm playing Pokemon Coliseum by myself. Like stuff like that, it's fine. Like when you get to have somebody there and you're all experiencing the story together, I'll never forget it, man.
See, that's something that I haven't experienced a whole lot in my life. Like I just wasn't ever someone growing up that played multiplayer much, just in general. I can think of 2 games ever playing through them with someone that were like co-op games. I played Portal 2, the co-op story there.
Great game.
I had a friend when I was in like middle school that he moved to Nashville, and like there was that summer I stayed the night at his house for like a week, and his parents like bought us a whole bunch of like 24 packs like Mountain Dew and stuff, and they let us go to Family Video, and we rented some games. And we rented, I think it was either Halo Reach or Halo 4. I want to say it was Halo Reach.
Halo Reach was the best. It was so good.
We rented Portal 2 and we rented Army of Two. I don't know if you remember that game.
I vaguely do. I never played it.
But it was one of those where it's like, it just is a co-op game. And so Portal 2 and Army of Two are the only 2, it's a lot of 2s, co-op games I've ever really played before. And so we've talked about like our intention to try to play, and you're actually going to stream an honor mode run of Baldur's Gate 3. I'm looking forward to it because it's something that like you talk a lot about how much playing through games like that with someone changes the experience. And I've done 2 full playthroughs of Baldur's Gate 3. And so I'm interested to see just kind of what that's like. Honestly, that's what I'm most excited
It'll
about.
be really cool for you because I had Bryson and Caleb, and so I saw like 2 other people and kind of how they played in a way. And so it'll just be funny for you to like, there's just gonna be random little things that you're just like, you do it like that? And I'm like, yeah. Like I don't know what those are gonna be because we haven't been there yet, but like there's gonna be so many conversations like that. Like a random question. Did you ever customize like your little bar at the bottom? Or like make it bigger or smaller, things like that?
My whole first playthrough didn't realize you could really do it until like the end of the game, so I didn't. The second playthrough, I did a lot more.
I don't know why. I can't stand having it just bigger. I keep everything default. So that's another reason why it like was kind of tough when if Bryson or Caleb couldn't be there or like they lagged for a second and they were like, oh, we'll just control my character because we're just doing something random. I'd click on like their character and it keeps like their bar because like the same way in single player, like if you wanted Karlax to look a certain way, it wouldn't affect how yours looked.
Right.
So I'd click on their character and take control of it, and I would see their bar with like the 4 different layers and like everything's, and I was like, what's happening? Because I keep mine the 2. It's the same 2 bars the whole time, and like everything's organized the default way. So
it depends on like what class. Like so, if I'm playing like a spellcaster or something, like I want to be able to see all the spells I can cast. You know.
I don't know. I just know where they are because like I played a druid, but in my mind I was just like, I know there's a 3rd, I know these are 4th, I know these are 5th, so I can just click the 2nd button, the 3rd button, the 4th button, or I know where my wild shapes are. It's this one and then that one. I don't know. It's just difference of how people prefer to play. Like it's just funny like that.
Yeah, there's your way and then there's the right way to do it.
So, my favorite one of my favorite moments, and this was kind of like multiplayer based, but kind of not. When we were, did you know the tower in the caves? Like in the Underdark, there's a tower where like there's the robot on top.
Yep.
We were trying to get in, and like you can go through like the bottom, you know, but once you get up to the balcony where there's the towers are shooting you, we were trying to determine how to get down there because you can see like the door and stuff, and we were on the edge, and Bryson, we were like, all right, well, what if we just like, I don't know, throw a feather falling potion down, and then we all jump, and we were like, oh, huge brain. But the game, for whatever reason, like I don't know if it was a bug or maybe they've patched it at this point, but we couldn't jump down. Like we could not get the characters to jump down there.
Yeah.
And finally, Bryson goes, he says like, what if we just shove somebody down there? And like the next thing you see is like I'm playing a gnome, and so the next thing you see is like, what if we just shove somebody down there? And then you see Shadowheart go, but my character just, my little gnome just flies down, and we're like, ah! But then because it was feather falling, I go. It said like 0 damage. We were all
nice.
like, yeah! We're like so hyped. So.
I had a completely different experience when I got to that tower for the first time because it's like there's like these turrets that like these automated turret things, and I was playing by myself because you know I don't have friends, and so I get there and I'm like, how am I gonna get into this place? And I kind of had like the vibe I got from it was one of those like, I'm not supposed to be here yet. It kind of felt like that. Like there's something I'm missing. I just stumbled on this, but I'm going to go for it anyway. And so I had like one character, and I just ran the whole tower with one character because I got, I can't remember which one I used. I think I used, what's his name? Astarion. Because he's a rogue. And I had him go invisible. And he had an item that gave him Misty Step or something, and that's how I got in was with Misty Step. And you have invisibility, you can get through all the turrets and stuff, and I just snuck through and just with just the one dude, the whole tower. Dang. And I was like, if I get in a fight, I'm chalked. Like I'm just gonna have to restart from the beginning. So it was this tense like stealth kind of segment of the game.
That's funny.
That was really fun to do. Even that though is like what you were saying before about how it's a game that has a pre-designed story, but just, I mean, the game didn't tell us to approach it differently. Yeah. We just came up with our own different solutions for it, and it completely changed the story and experience and the memory for us.
I think another great game that like was very successful for that reason was Tears of the Kingdom. I don't remember what the quote was, but I remember you telling me that someone who made the game had a quote of like, we made the game for you to like find ways to cheat a little bit or something like that.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact quote either, but like the developer was literally like, we just kind of decided that we're gonna make the game in a way where the intended design is for players to come up with their own kind of cheaty ways to like overcome problems.
Yeah, I bet if we looked at like every single puzzle in that game and how like you solved versus how I solved, it's probably different. Like 100%. Yeah. I remember so many times solving puzzles and going, I don't think that's how they wanted me to do it. Like, there's no way.
Yeah, and it had a kind of a D&D feel to it because of that, because that's kind of how D&D is. Yes. Where it's like, if I'm designing like obstacles or encounters for you guys, it's like, I think it's important that I think through like, okay, if I approach this, how would I deal with the problem? That way I can, test it at least and be like, there is a solution to this. Right. But I try not to like overdo that, and I try not to like present it like, here's the obvious, here's the answer to this question. And the fun of DMing often as a D&D, DMing is running the game we've been saying a lot of stuff without explaining anything, but I run the game a lot for us when we play D&D, and a lot of the fun of that is seeing how my player is going to solve this problem. And then what's more fun then is if you run the same stuff with different groups, and it's completely different solutions that they come up with. And it's just a lot of fun. It's very satisfying. Yeah.
Dude, I could go on about just RPG and Baldur's Gate stuff all day.
So with Baldur's Gate 3 then, it's kind of a big thing to say favorite game of all time.
Yeah.
It's a really new game to like say that for someone that's, I know you're like me, we've been playing video games since we were like kids, So what would you say if you had to try to articulate like a couple of just clear like qualities of Baldur's Gate 3 of like, because of these things, this is my favorite game of all time. And if I see other games coming out that have some of these qualities, like, I know I like it and I'm going to try those games out. Like, what are some of those things for you with Baldur's Gate 3?
I have never... So, at the end of the day, yes, it is a video game. It has programming and code. But I have never felt the level of I can just do literally anything I want in a video game.
Yeah.
Because, like, you could even... Like, there are some people who would say, like, oh, well, I go play GTA 5, I can do whatever I want. But it's like, you can't.
No.
When you talk to that NPC in that cutscene, whatever you... Like, your character just says things. Like, you don't have choices. Or like, if you like end up killing a character it tells you to kill in GTA and you kill him with a machine gun, all of a sudden the cutscene cuts over and you kill him with a pistol. It's like that's not the same thing. Or when it says get to this destination, you don't get to pick helicopter, car, like whatever. It's like it's telling you what to play. Like you don't get to do anything you want. Or like there might be moments where it's like, all right, you need to kill this person, and you might think, oh, well, there's like this electric puddle over here, or there's like these things. Can I kill him with that? No. Or like, oh, well, there's an explosive barrel right there, and you like hit it, and like nothing happens because it was just programmed to be like a background set piece. But in Baldur's Gate 3, like, I don't remember like ever having a moment where I was like, oh, you think we could do this? And then it was like, oh no, they just didn't program it in. Yeah. It's like everything just works. Yeah. Like they've genuinely thought about so many things. Like another example of like, I mean, the tower. Another great example is, did you go to the carnival and see that genie that was cheating on the wheel?
Yeah.
There's a genie and he has this magic ring called like the magic ring of cheating basically or something like that, and he's like, hey, if you pay me gold you can spin this wheel, and if you land on the uber super duper prize that'll be awesome, but there's like other bad stuff on there. You pay him and like you can't win, it's always going to land on and
he uses magic to cheat.
The amount of videos I've seen where people like in their genuine playthroughs, like they've never been spoiled, they just happen to have an idea and go, do you think I could pickpocket him? And they pickpocket him and take the ring. Or like someone else is like, do you think I could use Mage Hand and like move the wheel or something? Works. Like just stuff like that where people just do things. And it's not like they were trying to break the game. It's just genuinely the first thought that popped into their head as a gamer. And then they did it, it was programmed in. Yeah. Now, not everything is going to work in the sense of like it progresses the plot or like it, wins you the game. Yeah. But like the mechanics work. The amount of times we've had those moments like, you think I could Mage Hand this instead of picking it up? And like, oh, like stuff like that. Like it's so... just well programmed.
It's definitely as close to like playing a D&D video game as I've ever been, which it should be. It's the D&D video game. But yeah, that's cool. So that's one thing. Man, if we play our co-op playthrough and like you don't hate me by the end of it, we really should go back at some point and try co-op on a Divinity 2.
Is it co-op?
Yeah, it has, because Baldur's Gate 3 is built basically off the same engine.
Yeah.
So all that stuff that you were just saying is true of Divinity 2. It's a little bit more primitive, just because it's an older game. Like Baldur's Gate 3 is a better game, just because it's newer. It's a more experienced team. But I think the closest game you're going to find to Baldur's Gate 3 that exists right now is Divinity 2.
Yeah.
And I've played it through only one time. And when I played it through the first time, I had this is one of the best games I've ever played experience. And then I played Baldur's Gate 3 and I was like, it gave me the same feeling.
Yeah. I think the writing was also just really good. There are games where, again, like stuff just sort of happens. I never felt like I always felt like the things I was genuinely doing as the player was affecting the story. And there was a small part of me that was like, I don't know if anyone else is doing it like this. Yeah. Which ultimately they do a good job of like, to a degree, there's still a bones of like a story that's going to follow through for everyone. but it didn't feel like that. And even if something bad happened in a cutscene, I couldn't help but think like, oh, this is the consequences of my own actions. Like I made the mistake of killing this person, or I trusted this person and I shouldn't have. Whereas a great example of like, I think it's very widely agreed is Borderlands 3. They somehow had Borderlands 2, and it's like this perfect, just on a pedestal, really well written game. Like they have the villain, and it's called Handsome Jack, is like top 5 villains of all time for video games for a lot of people. Like he's just so well written.
I never played those ones either.
And then Borderlands 3 is just like how do you just fall from grace that hard? And there's a moment where one of the cutscenes, like you walk into this area, there's this really great character, her name's Maya, that's like beloved, people love her. They have this terrible written character that was introduced in Baldur's Gate 3 that no one likes. Like a story, like to this day, people like think, why does this character exist? You walk in, you fight this boss, and then it's like, you go on ahead, I'll stay here in this clearly dangerous area and not do anything. And like, I literally remember on my original playthrough sitting there and be like, why would I leave? Why would I leave this room? They're like, go in there and deal with that. And I'm like, we don't have to. Like, the villain that just escaped is like this monster, and he's like in this portal where I'm like, I don't have to go kill him right now. You're dying. There's like stuff going on. I was like, I don't have to leave, but I was like, okay, the game's telling me to go.
Right.
I go in there, I kill the boss, and you come back out, and the main villain is like there, and he kills this character that everybody loves, and I was just like, why does this happen? And stuff like that doesn't happen in Baldur's Gate. I remember our first playthrough, Jaheira died, and it wasn't like a cutscene where something happened. It was because we got the alternate bad timeline where like the massive spoiler here. There's if you don't save Isabella, the cleric in the Twilight Tavern place, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
if you don't save her, the town dies.
Yeah, my first playthrough, I had a hard time with that fight actually, and I had to reload it several times.
Yeah. So everybody turns to zombies, and we're like just literally the entire town, like so many bad guys on the initiative tracker that you have to scroll through it, and we're in the tavern just going hard, and eventually Jaheira just falls on her own. And so our original timeline, Jaheira falls, and there was no point. It was like, why would they write it like that? It was like, we could have done better. Like, we could have done more to save her. And it felt so good.
I'm excited to do an honors mode run, because I am someone, I play those games, and I try not to be save scummy. Mm-hmm. But then, like, you were saying that, and I remember my first playthrough, like, being so caught off guard by the surprise attack there, and just, like, you know, caught with my pants between my ankles, like, around my ankles, and just being just totally failed to protect Isabella. Yeah. And being like, well, I'm not doing that. And like reloaded it. Which like with an honor mode run of that game, if you don't know, you can't reload your saves. Like whatever decision you make, you're stuck with. If you die, you're dead, the game is over. Yeah. Like you could have 30 hours in the playthrough and die and your game's over and you have to restart.
That is the one spot that we save scummed basically. We ended up loading it, and so we had Jaheira in the end. And it was only because we found out that if you do that, you can't romance Karlach at all. And Caleb was going for a romance Karlach run. Like, because the blacksmith guy dies, and like, he's like an essential NPC for a request.
That's funny.
That specific fight, it was, like, it caught us off guard as well. I think also that fight, like, I've played it over and over, even just on normal difficulty, and you can just genuinely get bad luck. Yeah. Like, sometimes the NPCs, for whatever reason, will be like, all right, we're all going to attack Isabella, and 2 of us are going to crit for no reason. Yeah. They'll just like run past you, and so sometimes
it's a really hard encounter to win if you don't know what's coming.
Yeah. And so of course when we first played it, we didn't know what's coming. And that's another beautiful thing about that game that I think I would hope other multiplayer games do is in a lot of multiplayer games, let's say, even Borderlands 2, which Borderlands 2 came out in 2012. If I'm in the snowy area, I forget the name of it, like it's called like the Highlands or something. Yeah. Jonah can't be in Sanctuary or like the main town because we have to be in the same loaded area. And if I'm doing this, like it affects how Jonah. But like in Baldur's Gate 3, I remember when we first got to the Underdark, we had just finished fighting like Minotaurs and stuff, and I was like, dang, I'm carrying a lot of stuff. I'm gonna go back to the other side of the continent and sell some stuff real quick. Are y'all good? And they're like, yeah. And then they're down there still sneaking and exploring, and I'm just like selling to an NPC. And so in that moment, that's how it happened for us was. I had just talked to the cow and done that thing, and like Caleb's selling some stuff. Bryson goes and talks to Jaheira and like does the main NPC stuff, and we're just like walking along. Me and Caleb are doing other things in the town, and all of a sudden Bryson's like, "Dude, somebody's pulling up." We're like, "What do you mean somebody's pulling up?" Initiatives rolling. We're just like, "What's happening?" And so we were literally, but that's the beauty of it is we could be so far apart and doing so many different things that I don't know. Like most games kind of limit you. Like, oh, it's multiplayer, but you all 4 have to be in the same area. You have to be doing the same thing. And once Cody starts this, you have to also be doing that with him.
Right.
But in Baldur's Gate 3, like, we could literally be doing entirely different quest lines if we wanted to.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
He says you got to be in the same loaded area. Loaded areas in Baldur's Gate 3 can be literally the whole map. Like, if you're just outside, that's the entire map. So you could be on completely different ends of the game map. I can't even really think of many examples of, like, there's some situations where, like, you know, you couldn't travel between, like, Act 1 and Act 2.
Yeah, that's the only limitation, basically.
There's some other ones. There's some minor spoilers already for this game. We should probably not do more. But there's some other examples that I could think of. But, yeah. We got to play some... 'cause you're new, and I think this is true for a lot of people, to the CRPG game. There's a few of them that I've played. I think they're probably available to you since we're in a Steam family.
That's a good way to start to end this, is that we just share our Steam family. And I looked at your amount of games. Like, I consider myself a gamer, and I probably got my gaming PC and, like, really made the official, like, I'm not going to really be a console person anymore. I'm going to start trying to get games on my PC in, like, 2021, so, like, 4 years ago now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. It was that soon.
Yeah, like 4 years ago now. So, like, I had, like, a gaming PC before that, but it wasn't great. And so I didn't play that many games on it. It was basically just if a game was mainly for PC, or, I don't know, like, when I first got my gaming PC, I got Borderlands 2 on it, and it ran pretty well. But I got it thinking, like, I'm going to be a YouTuber, you know, but I was 13, so...
Yeah.
But I really made the switch in, like, 2021, and I was like, I want to play Valorant, I'm going to start playing these other PC games. So I was like, but I still was like, you know, I feel like I'm a gamer. And then I shared Steam libraries with Cody, and when I tell you Cody's is probably genuinely quadruple my amount of games, that's probably a legitimate, like, no exaggeration, probably 4 times the amount of games. I was just in there scrolling, like, how many games do you have? Like, I did not expect that. But
I haven't played all those games, in fairness. I have a lot of... Back in the day, there's this website called Humble Bundle. I don't know if you know about Humble Bundle. Yep. It used to be a lot better. Back in the day, they used to have just one bundle at a time. Like, one bundle a month. But they'd be bangers. Like, they were all video game bundles. And they'd have some good stuff in there at good deals. I have a ton of games that it's like... There was one game in the bundle that I wanted, and then it just came with 6, 7 other games. So that's a lot of my library. But yeah, I've been a member of the PC Master Race since 2013, I think. Like, my sophomore year of high school. That was when I took an IT class my freshman year, and then I took, the class was called A+ Cert, like A+ certification, or A+ Ready or something like that. My sophomore year, which the A+ certification is like kind of an entry-level IT certificate you can get. And so, like, I took that class and I knew how to build a computer, and I was like, I want to do it. And from that moment on, I was, you know, PC gamer. The only console that I've consistently kept up with since then is Nintendo, because Nintendo doesn't put any of their stuff on PC. But all of my favorite games nowadays come out on PC, except for Nintendo games like Zelda and stuff. But and a lot of my favorite game, like Civ, you can play Civ on console.
Yeah, but
who's playing Civ on console though? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of games like that where it's like they're only on PC, and they're my favorite kinds of games.
But definitely a PSA out there for any gamers that Steam family is lit. Like, I didn't, like, when you were describing it to me, I genuinely thought, like, there's got to be like a catch to this. Like, this isn't going to work the way we think
it's
it is.
New. It's a new feature. Well, sort of. They kind of had it before, but it kind of sucked. Like, it wasn't nearly as good. It's relatively new, where you can have up to 5 people in your Steam family, and it functionally works as though, like, if you, like, back in the day when you would just bring your game over and, like, hey, you want to borrow my copy of Splinter Cell Blacklist? Sure. And you just give them the game and they can play it. Yeah. Like, that's weirdly uncommon nowadays because of everything's digital. Steam has gotten around that. You can have a Steam family with up to 5 people in it, and just any game, unless the developer, like, specifically opts out of it, which sucks if they do that. But like, if any developers are listening, I know we have a huge audience. Developers, if you're listening, don't suck.
Rockstar why isn't Red Dead 2 available for Steam Family?
Yeah, but it's pretty cool. There's even some that you had that I haven't gotten to play yet.
Yeah, but like Civ 7, you were saying like I bought Civ 7 like on my account, but you were playing it earlier because I bought it. So like that means that like if I had logged on and be like, I really want to play Civ 7 this morning, but you were already playing it, then like I couldn't have.
Yeah.
It would have been a conversation of like who's gonna get to play it, but I was playing a game this morning, so you were like, I'm gonna play.
Yeah. So we split the cost on it, and it's just cool to be able to kind of do stuff like that now. That's like I think the Steam Family sharing is even better than like back in the day being able to just like lend a game to somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's literally just the second you get done playing, and he's in a different town than me.
Yeah.
Playing it, the second he gets done, I can hop on and start playing it.
Yeah. All right, I got your computer battery is low notification, so we're having to call it there.
Yeah, this was kind of all over the place. This is the first of the side quests. This one, I hope you kind of caught a vibe of what these side quest episodes are going to be like. Just kind of us chatting about stuff we like. We focused a lot on video games this time. Maybe some of these in the future will be a little bit more focused. Maybe not. I don't know. But they're just going to be fun. So if you're here for the theology and the Christian conversation, we hope that you're here for that. These side quest ones are kind of a break from those. So if that's not your scene, feel free to skip these. You're not going to hurt our feelings. But maybe you can find some new hobbies or things that you're interested in listening to these. And hopefully, if not, it's just fun to listen to two nerds be nerds for a little while.
I found out I did the thing again. I did it last time we did this too, where I was like, how is it dying? The charger's plugged in. I can see it. I didn't plug it into the wall. I plugged it into the PC, didn't plug it into the wall. So
you know what? We're pros here.
PSA, plug your charger into the wall. All right, that'll do it for us. See you in the next one.
Peace.